Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Today's topic, which I sort of scribbled on the board behind you in very, very faded letters, is advanced tax deferral. It's kind of faded, which is probably the way most of us think about it because we don't quite understand maybe what I'm talking about. Does everybody know what tax deferral is? It's not evading taxes or anything like that. Tax deferral is your 401k. It's when you put money into an IRA or a 401k before you pay income taxes on it. That's one tax deferral strategy. And then it grows and eventually you pay income tax when you take that money out. That's what basic tax deferral is. My goal here today is to take that very fuzzy title over there on the board and make it a little more clear for you so that maybe people can understand what maybe advanced tax deferral strategy would be. And in order to explain that, what I'd like to do is use a lot of illustrations and examples. I'm going to use really big numbers because it's easier to understand that way. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to imagine that we have I picked the best marker, $1 million. We are loaded. We have $1 million, we're getting close to retirement, we're doing really well. And because we're close to retirement, our mix, our asset allocation, the amount of bonds and stocks that we have in our portfolio is 50-50. So you have 50% bonds and 50% stocks. So we have a nice mix of 50-50 with our portfolio. Now we may have accounts that are 401k or State Street. We may have accounts with an IRA that's maybe Charles Schwab. We may have a taxable account that happens to be a trust, or maybe it's not a trust. Maybe it's just a joint account with you and your wife, or maybe you just own an account that you've been saving in since you were a kid. So that's the difference between those two is the one has the tax deferral strategy, the 401k, where you put money in before tax, and you're taxed when you take it out. The other one has it's taxable as you go. So you put $3,000 in into a taxable account, it's going to be taxed. Irregardless, as it grows, it's taxed. So if we have this 50-50 mix of bonds and stocks, based on what our overall allocation should be, how can we defer some of that tax so that we can have a bigger pot at the end when we get ready to retire? Because as you know, or maybe you don't know, taxes are one of the things that will cause your portfolio to erode and sort of be smaller than it could be. So what I would suggest you do is you say, okay, let's say we have just two accounts. We have a 401k and we have a taxable account. Inside the 401k, if our mix is 50-50, let's buy $500,000 worth of bonds. And inside the taxable account, let's buy $500,000 worth of stocks. So what we've effectively done, and why would we do that? Why would we put the bonds there versus the stocks? What's one aspect about bonds that, anyone? One key characteristics. Pardon?
They're safer investments.
They are safer investments. And what do they do as opposed to growing like stocks do?
Dividends?
They pay dividends. Dividends and interest. So this time of year, when you get ready to do your 1040, which hopefully everybody's already done, unless they're waiting until Monday, they may have, in an account like this that pays 4%, $500,000 worth of bonds would pay you $20,000 in dividends and interest at 4%. So if your income is $100,000, all of a sudden your income goes up to $120,000 because you've had all those dividends from your bond portfolio. If you were to split that and put all the bonds inside the 401k and all the stocks inside the taxable account, all of a sudden that $20,000 is taken out of your 1040 and you have stocks that maybe pay dividends as well, but you've sheltered all of those dividends and interest from the bonds this year and every year until you get ready to retire. It's kind of an advanced tax deferral strategy that you can use in order to lower your taxes now. Obviously, when you get ready to take that money out, you have to pay income tax on all of that. But if you can shelter it now, you might as well. Now, as far as the stock side goes, There's another way that you can do an advanced tax deferral strategy, and that's to pick funds that don't pay large dividends. Because mutual funds or index funds or actively managed funds pay dividends as well. Now, if you're an actively managed mutual fund, which means they're trying to beat the market all the time, you have to constantly buy and sell stocks because you're trying to beat what the S&P 500 does, the market, the status quo for investing in the stocks. Whereas if you're a stock index, an index fund like the S&P 500, which most of us might know of the Vanguard S&P 500, you're not going to be buying and selling stocks. You just hold those same 500 stocks. And the only time you switch is if they switch one of the 500 stocks that are in the index. So you have less capital gains, which means you're going to have less capital gains and dividends at the end of the year by holding an index type of fund as opposed to an actively managed fund. And there's other reasons to hold it too, because the costs are less expensive. But basically, by employing a strategy where you put tax inefficient investments like bonds inside a 401k and putting tax efficient, really super uber tax efficient funds like index funds inside the taxable account, you're going to lower your tax bill when it comes to this time of year. In fact, you're going to have quite a bit more. This person here would probably pay between $10,000 and $20,000 less in income tax this year. And if they have $1 million, then their taxes are probably high anyways at this point in time. And I use the big numbers because it's easier to see. Wow, you just saved $20,000. But let's say you only have $100,000. And 50 of it's in a 401k and 50 is in the taxable account. You just saved $2,000. That's not a bad reward too. And I tell you what, over time, $2,000 every single year for 30 years or maybe 20 years can really add up. So if you want to take your accounts and make them tax deferral using your 401k, think about advanced tax deferral strategies and putting bonds in the 401k, index funds inside the taxable account. Back to you, Mr. Postmaster.
All right, we'll take a minute and evaluate Rich's speech. And we have time for table topics if Ganesh is ready. Seconds to finish up. All right, we'll move on to table topics now. Our table topics master for today is Ganesh Modi. Ganesh is currently working on the org chart where my bureau is moving into Manesh's, so I try to get some inside information on where if I'm still listed in a box somewhere. I hope so. So, Manesh Modi.
Thank you. Keep up the impression because I'm really not drawing that org chart, but I'm part of the discussion, so I don't know. Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters.
Good afternoon.
We had